Nathan Cross, an architect, 33 years old. His wife, Chloe, is nearby. A rented SUV, the return trip is scheduled for the evening of the same day. The route includes a short ascent to an old mine quarry. The trail is classified as for the unprepared. A camera at the entrance to the recreational area captures the car at 15 minutes past 9 in the morning. The frame is clear. Cross is behind the wheel. His wife is in the passenger seat. This is the last objective record where both are alive in the frame. Around 10:30, Cross's phone makes an outgoing call to a business partner, lasting less than a minute. According to the interrogation protocol, the partner recounted the content of the conversation. Cross spoke calmly, without signs of anxiety, calling the place ideal for quiet before the work week. The investigator notes in the protocol the witness's reaction during the testimony. Pauses in speech, a drop in voice, a damp trace of palms on the table. After this call, Cross's device disappears from the network. The last signal is received by the repeater tower at the entrance. Then, the silence of the air. Meteorologists have been warning since morning a monsoon front is approaching the ridge. In the evening, the rental agency records the overdue return of the car. Calls to both spouses' numbers are sent to voicemail. The time of the last contact is recorded in the missing person report filed by the family. At night, the county police classify the case as high risk. A mobile command center is set up in the parking lot near the reservoir. The SUV is found empty, locked, with personal belongings inside untouched. The front moves onto the ridge. The precipitation turns into a downpour. Visibility drops to a few feet. The dirt trails flow with liquid clay. Rescuers and volunteers familiar with the area are brought in to assist with the search. A mile from the parking lot, the flashlight beam catches a detail on the trail. Cross's glasses. The left lens is broken with brown spots on the temples. An express test on the spot gives a positive reaction to blood. Next to it is trampled grass and broken shrub branches at shoulder level. There are no signs of dragging bodies. Instead, on the still uneroded soil, there are prints of 3 pairs of shoes. 2 pairs match the size and pattern of the soles of the couple. The third is a heavier protector of the army type, several sizes larger. All prints lead in one direction, to the quarry. A traceologist working in the rain introduces a discrepancy into the report. The step of all 3 is equal. The distance between the prints is constant. The depth of the toe and heel is the same. There is no jerk on the run. There are no lateral displacements that a body escaping from the tension leaves. There is no fall. The tracks lead to the lowest point in the gorge, where all the slopes converge. The water in the beds rises before one's eyes. The stream throws the group away from the bottom of the quarry. The radio communication is jammed by the storm. The couple disappears, without bodies, without witnesses. The last line that is entered into the materials of that night remains unexplained. A man with a bloody face walks a whole mile to the quarry with an even, calm step, not trying to either escape or fall, or even stumble to the side once. Until dawn, the water cannot be contained. The bottom of the quarry, where the tracks lead, is under a stream. The group cannot lift it. The downpours subside only towards morning. For a few more days, the level remains too high to descend. The operation is rolled up. The attack of the gravedigger is transferred from the search to the category of missing persons and put into the current archive. Further, the case moves along the lines in the cart. Cross's hometown files a petition for renewal of the search. It is returned with a resolution of no new circumstances. Another petition, the same resolution. The Giants composite is taken down from the stands. Media inquiries cease. The trails in the San Juan Mountains stand empty season after season. The water level in the quarry doesn't drop. 1 year, 2, 3. It takes a drought to shift it. An abnormally dry summer brings the water in the entire system to a historic low. The district enters planned work on the water intake. The shallows expose the bottom of an old quarry pit, which a flood once turned into a muddy bowl. A technical team descends to the bottom. One of the workers stops and raises his hand, calling the group. The report records his condition at the time of discovery: petrification, slurred speech, trembling of the hand with which he points in the direction. 2 human figures protrude vertically from the compacted earth, up to their necks. Their bodies are fixed in the dense rock, their pose unchanged since the moment of burial. The distance between them is less than a meter. Personal belongings, wedding rings, and documents removed under protocol provide preliminary identification: Nathan Cross and his wife. An old photograph is retrieved from the archive. The press is informed the same day. A name once removed from the agenda is back in the headlines. Sergeant Marcus Reed is called to the scene, the same one who led the nighttime search 3 years ago and who signed off on its termination. A notation on the service record reads: "During the inspection, Reed stands motionless for a long time, his gaze fixed on the bottom of the pit." The remains are lifted by hand. The soil is so dense that it only yields to a pickaxe. The investigative team fixes the geometry of the burial, takes rock samples from the walls and floor, packs them for laboratory analysis. The forensic examination gives a preliminary cause of death of the man: mechanical asphyxia. In the woman, the position of the cervical vertebrae is fixed differently. The head is thrown back to the extreme limit, the neck is stretched upwards, the body stretched to the last above the level reached by the water. This difference in the poses of the 2 burials is entered in the protocol as a separate item, without explanation. The family orders precise measurements to be taken with a laser rangefinder. The result is entered in the protocol as a separate line. The bottom of both pits is brought to the same level. But the level of compacted soil near the man's neck is exactly 5 centimeters lower than in the woman's pit. The discrepancy is not explained by either the digger's mistake or the natural slope of the rock. Both pits are oriented along one axis. The walls are rectangular, held in a single shape, 5 centimeters. It was this size that the man's head sat deeper. It was this size that decided whose airway would remain above the water level when the ball began to fill. Someone didn't just bury 2 people in a row. Someone measured who would breathe. Further, an object that is extracted from the mud near the woman's wrist. A wristwatch. The mechanism is stopped. The hand is stuck. The time on the dial does not match the reconstructed chronology of that night. It does not lie on the camera frame at the entrance, nor on the last signal from Cross's phone, nor on the window into which, according to the official version, the attack on the trail occurred. The watch stopped earlier than the moment when the couple, according to all available documents, was just approaching the quarry. The discrepancy with the clock is not attributed to the malfunction of the mechanism. It is included in the resolution on the resumption of proceedings and entails: if the chronology of that night does not match at least one device, it is checked on all. Sergeant Reed retrieves telecom data on both devices of the couple from the archive and re-queries the operator, with an extended period, not just for the day of disappearance. An analyst from the department combines all network contacts into one table. Cross's phone goes dark the same night the picture is set. The last contact is a relay tower at the entrance to the canyon. The network doesn't see it beyond that. Then there's a line that shouldn't be in the table. Cross's phone's hardware ID registers on the network again. Not that night. About a year and a half after he disappeared. The contact lasts a fraction of a second. The phone is turned on. It hooks onto a base station and goes dark. The station is 100 miles from the canyon, in another county. The phone of the person who was picked up from the ground dead turns on a year and a half later, 100 miles from where she was left lying. The analyst checks the tie twice. His state is recorded in the service note during the report. Broken speech, a repeated request to check the identifier, a delay of the hand before handing the printout to read. The first working version is a technical failure, a phantom record, an echo of an old contact in the billing. The operator removes it. The system recorded the actual connection of the device to the station, with a handshake of the network, not a duplicate of the archival signal. At that moment, Cross's phone was turned on and alive. The investigation follows the signal as a trail of a living being. The operator is directed to query, under which subscriber was the device in the network at the time of that contact. The answer breaks the direction. Another SIM card, registered to a third party, is inserted into the phone. The hardware identifier is Cross's. The subscriber is not. The card owner is identified and worked out. There is no involvement with the couple, the canyon, or that night. According to the interrogation protocol, he received the device used, without a box and documents, at a spontaneous market of broken equipment a few dozen miles from the station. The chain is unwound backwards. The device was passed through a reseller, and before that, through a collection of non-working phones, where it was handed over for spare parts. The trail is lost on the link where equipment is accepted without the description of its origin and without linking to a person. Why the network contact lasted only a fraction of a second is explained simply. The device was turned on to check if it was working. The screen requested an unlock code tied to the previous owner. The phone was immediately turned off. This moment was enough for the station to have time to fix it, and for the dead device to report itself in the network once. The search for the one who turned on the device ends in a dead end. But the very fact of the phone's movement turns the picture of that night upside down. The device did not drown with Cross in the pit. It was not washed away by the flow. It was carried out of the canyon and taken far beyond the county, into the channel, where the river diverges without documents and without a trace. According to the official version, that night in the canyon there was a random attacker in a mask who disappeared into the forest. A random attacker does not take the victim's phone, does not keep it with him for months, and does not sell it 100 miles away through a broken equipment collection point. The one who left the couple in the ground knew exactly which item to take out of the canyon and where to take it. He wasn't running blindly. He was covering his tracks. The conclusion that someone cleaned up the scene that night changes the profile of the suspect. The investigation is no longer looking for a vagabond who disappeared into the forest. It is looking for someone who acted methodically, knew the area, and had the physical strength to keep two people under control all the way to the quarry. A name that fits this profile has already been in the archive. Over the past 3 years, dozens of messages have been received from locals in the case. Almost everyone pointed to one person, Roy Holt, a resident of the neighborhood adjacent to the San Juan Mountains, lives alone, walks abandoned trails that are officially considered impassable. Tall stature, old camouflage suit, a set of digging tools in the household. Holt is taken for processing. Based on external data, he lies down on an old photograph, almost without discrepancies. Build, height, type of clothing, which is described by the only reconstruction of the mask. During the interrogation, his condition is recorded. On the video, you can see profuse sweat on his temples, a slight trembling of his fingers as he takes the pen to sign the protocol. His voice breaks in the middle of a phrase. He gets confused with dates, names different days, corrects himself a minute later. To a direct question about the night of the disappearance, he bursts into a scream, then falls silent and holds a frozen gaze at one point. The picture is formed for investigators and the press. Appearance, location, tool, behavior under pressure. Materials are prepared for the presentation of suspicion. A witness also appears in the materials. A resident of the neighboring plot reports that in the days before the disappearance, he saw a large figure in camouflage near the closed turn to the trail. According to the identification protocol, he points to Holt. Holt himself does not deny his presence on those trails. According to his explanation, he walks them constantly. For the investigation, this sounds almost like a confession. The name leaks to the press before any procedural decision. The panic that had subsided over the years erupts again. In the region, doors are closed again and paths are avoided. Further direction breaks on one document. A check is made of where Holt was on the night of the disappearance. His name is found in the journal of the county isolator, dozens of miles from the canyon. That day he was brought there after an incident in the city and was held until morning. The record has a timestamp of admission. Holt could not physically be in the canyon that night. The alibi is irrefutable. It's not from the words of witnesses, but from the internal log of the institution. The only convenient suspect is completely out of the case. But before releasing him, a shovel was seized during a search of the household. She is sent for comparison with previous marks on the walls of the pits. The result again shakes the investigation back. The type of tool matches. A bayonet shovel with a narrowed blade and a long handle is exactly the type that leaves even deep cuts recorded in the quarry. For a moment, a version emerges that Holt acted not alone. The version is removed just as quickly. This shovel is a mass commercial model, sold in any household and hunting store in the region. Goltova is one of thousands. She does not tie him to the pits. She confirms only one thing: what kind of tool the real digger held in his hands. The shovel does not betray anyone. It raises a new question. If not gold, then who exactly got the same tool, went out with it to the abandoned quarry, and made two even rectangles in the dead ground, adjusted to one shape? The question about the tool returns the investigation to the pits themselves. To read how they were made, a judicial geoarchaeologist, Evelyn Shaw, is involved. She works not with bodies, but with the soil. Takes samples from the walls, from the bottom, from the dumps around the quarry. Shaw's first conclusion, dictated for the record, breaks the entire chronology of that night. The soil in this sector is granite with clay, compacted over decades. The blade of a shovel does not enter it without a preliminary blow with a pickaxe. According to Shaw's assessment, 2 holes of such depth require not a stormy night, but prolonged work with heavy tools, at least 5 or 6 hours of continuous work, even for 2 physically strong people. In the interval that the official version allocated for the night of the attack, such work does not fit. This already takes out of the game the picture of a chaotic night crime. But further on comes what changes the very essence of the case. During macrophotography of the bottom, when the surface was slightly dried, the technicians recorded foreign material under a thin layer of fresh mud. Last year's dry leaves pressed in the corners. Whole intact spider webs at the junction of the wall and the bottom. The show checks the obvious answer. It was brought in later, during the flood. The answer does not pass. The mud from the night flood lies on top, covering the leaves and spider webs. Therefore, this material was on the bottom before the flood. Until the night of the disappearance, the pits had been open long before the couple stepped onto the trail. According to the expert's conclusion, the exposed cavities existed at least several days before the crime. Even when Cross and his wife had not yet flown to the state, a counter-explanation arises. Perhaps this is an old mining cavity that the perpetrator simply adapted. The show takes it off, and it does. The cuts on the walls are fresh, made with a tool, not weathered by time. Both pits are brought under a single template. with sustained right angles, the same depth and the same orientation along the axis. This is not a found pit. This is a manufactured product. The grave turns out to be older than the murder itself. The family rereads the paragraph with the conclusion twice. At the mark in the case, the printout he puts aside not immediately. This finally closes the version of a random attacker. Nobody sets up an ambush for specific people on an abandoned trail that tourists don't walk on, and prepares a spot for them several days in advance without knowing the route, date, or time. Someone knew all this in advance. The investigation raises the question of where to start uncovering contract killings. Who benefits from Cross's death? A financial audit provides the answer quickly. The architect's estate, real estate, a share in the firm, accounts, is estimated at over $1 million. A week before the wedding, the couple signed a marriage contract. Under its terms, in the event of a divorce, the wife received a fixed small payment. In the event of the husband's death, inherited everything. Further, the audit records another line. A month before the trip, Cross doubled the amount of his life insurance. The sole beneficiary of the policy is his wife. The motive fits perfectly. Money multiplied by quick inheritance. The investigation already has someone whose death Cross brought everything. Only this beneficiary lay in the neighboring pit. Cross's wife, the sole heir to his fortune, died in the same quarry, a meter away from him. A dead heir does not receive an inheritance. A dead beneficiary does not receive a payout. And yet, someone dug these graves in advance, exactly for two. The paradox of the graves dug in advance for exactly two forces the investigation to change its optics. Cross and his wife are no longer considered just victims. Their accounts, trips, and contacts are raised just as they would be for suspects. The first to be checked is Cross's business partner, the same one Cross called last that morning. At the start of the case, he was a witness. Now he is put in the center. The partner has a motive. The company's audit shows the movement of funds from the company's accounts to the side. Cross's death removed both control and uncomfortable questions from the partner. Moreover, his initial alibi for the night of the disappearance is not confirmed. The place he named is refuted by his own payment and network data. The partner is summoned again. During the interrogation, his state is recorded. Rapid breathing, wet palms. He repeatedly asks questions and pulls with an answer about his movements that night. The investigation is convinced that it has found the customer. The version does not last long. The development of the money trail shows otherwise. The partner indeed withdrew funds from the company, but did it long before the murder and hid the theft itself, not the involvement in the canyon. His lies about that night covered a spree, not a grave. There are no ties to the career, to the tool, to the site preparation. Ultimately, his actual movements that night are established by payments and cameras in another town, hundreds of miles from the ridge. The partner lied, stole, and panicked. But he wasn't in the canyon. Another convenient figure burns. The investigation returns to the couple's own phones, and here the billing hits the fan. The established picture of Cross's wife, like his own, fell silent that night. But an expanded query on her number pulls up an early contact that had gone unnoticed before. 3 years ago, this record didn't interest anyone. The woman was led as a victim, not as a suspect, and her movements before that night were not verified by anyone. Now they are being verified. 2 days before her disappearance, her phone was hooked to the same single repeater tower at the entrance to the canyon. The one that catches the signal only in this dead sector and nowhere nearby. 2 days before the attack, Cross's wife was already there, alone, in a place where, according to her own circle of communication, she supposedly never went. A dead woman who for 3 years was considered the second victim of a maniac, first appears in the case from the other side, as a person who arrived at the site of her own grave ahead of time. The investigation raises what Cross's wife said about that day to her loved ones. According to their testimony, she called a completely different place and other plans. The tower record does not match any version that she voiced during her lifetime. She wasn't just there, she was hiding it. Her calls pick up completely. Calls thicken in the week before the trip and stretch late into the night. In the call log for the months leading up to her death, one number repeats more than any other, more than her husband's number. The number is dialed. It belongs to Tyler Owens, a personal trainer at Summit Athletics, the gym where Cross's wife worked out. The woman, who was buried a meter away from her husband, had driven down a deserted path without witnesses just a few days before her death. And most often in her life, she was not calling the architect who inherited everything, but the coach from her sports club. Tyler Owens is being put on full processing. The dossier is being compiled quickly and fits into one portrait: the perpetrator who needed money. Debts on consumer loans. Rent that he was dragging with delays. Payments for a powerful pickup that were overdue. Physically strong. According to the club's records, with an exit beyond the work of a coach with several clients. Cross's wife trained with him regularly. The investigation raises his expenses for the week before the couple's disappearance. One payment stops the review. A hunting and household store, a card payment, a significant amount for Owens. The store's camera footage is seized. A file with the tag of the day provides an image without any discrepancies. On the footage, Owens is calm. He is not in a hurry. He drives the cart between the rows, stops by the necessary shelves without hesitation, as if he knew the list in advance. The contents of the cart are recorded frame by frame. 2 bayonet shovels with a narrowed blade and a reinforced handle, of the same type that leaves even deep cuts in dense soil. The camouflage suit is several sizes too big for him. White armored duct tape, a large piece of coarse burlap, the material the mask that once terrorized the region was made of. This is not hiking gear. This is a kit for a specific scene. With a warrant obtained based on billing and video, a SWAT team enters Owens' residence. The apartment is cleared. The closets are empty. There are no belongings. And no Owens either. He got up from his seat earlier. On the table, among the bills, a laptop remains in sleep mode. The power indicator blinks. The equipment is removed without turning it off to preserve the contents of the RAM. In the lab, the disk gives the main thing. Owens synchronized his phone with the laptop. He deleted messages in the app after each conversation, but backups settled on the computer. According to experts, this is more of a deliberate archive than carelessness. Insurance against an accomplice. Decryption provides a minute-by-minute chronology of the conspiracy. It is entered into the case as correspondence between the two. According to the correspondence, the weather front was not an obstacle, but a tool. The participants monitored the storm forecast and waited for a window with a high probability of flooding in the canyon. In a message a few days before the murder, a calculation is recorded. One pit is brought above the relief by 5 centimeters. The bowl will fill up in half an hour to an hour, and the water will reach the chin of one, covering the other. A separate block of correspondence describes a plan in case the water does not rise. To go down yourself, dig the ground and present everything as a rescue from an attacker who escaped on sirens. Another block fixes the stage directions on the trail. To hit so that there is blood, but so that the victim walks on her own. And there is also a breakdown that explains the finale of that night. The flood went faster than calculated. Instead of a slow filling, the bowl began to fill in minutes. The one who waited upstairs to find and pull out the accomplice saw that the water had already covered the bottom, and the calculation of the levels lost its meaning. He didn't go down. He turned the pickup around and drove off, leaving in the pit not only the man, but also the one he was supposed to save. Those 5 centimeters no longer saved anyone. The laptop that stored all this lay open on the table of the abandoned apartment. The person who fled the state left behind the only evidence that linked her to each pit, to each centimeter of calculation, and to the body of the woman she was supposed to pull out alive. The laptop gives the investigation what it was missing to intercept: a complete digital profile of Owens. A plan to intercept is announced based on its data, and the description of the pickup is sent to neighboring states. The geolocation of the device's last contacts indicates the direction. It is moving south, to the border of the jurisdiction. Patrol crews block traffic on the interstate highway outside the city. The pickup is pinched between cars. Owens does not resist arrest. He comes out with his hands up. The vehicle inspection closes the material line. Under the tarp in the body, dirty camouflage and a bayonet shovel, which he did not have time to get rid of on the way. On the blade of the shovel, the examination later finds soil identical in composition to the breed from the bottom of the quarry. To this is added a cast of the tread, taken during the first inspection on the upper platform above the quarry. The tread pattern of the tire matches the wheels of his pickup truck. The car that couldn't be linked to the case for 3 years was over the holes that night. Owens is shown the seized correspondence and reminded of the penalty for capital murder in the state. By the notation in the record, he falls silent for a long time, then changes his line completely. He chooses to cooperate in exchange for the death penalty being taken off the table. According to his testimony, the idea and calculation belonged to Cross's wife. He portrays himself as an executor who was led by an unwilling hand. The investigation compares this with the correspondence. The correspondence does not confirm the image of an unwilling hand. In the messages presented against this version, the instructions come from her. She determines the depth of the pits, chooses the place of impact on the path, calculates the gain. One of the fragments captures her remark about how she will dispose of the insurance payment. This is not the language of a person who was forced. There is no one to judge her. Cross's wife lay a meter away from her husband in the same quarry. Her guilt is established posthumously, by her own hand in the archive of correspondence. Here, the main structure of the case is closed. A woman built a murder, calculated to the centimeter, and herself perished in it, because the flood broke her model, and the accomplice chose his own skin. The calculation, in which she assigned herself the role of the only survivor, took away the accountant as well. The proceedings are closed. Owens is being held in custody until trial for murder with aggravation and conspiracy. The name of the maniac in the mask, who had been terrorizing the region for 3 years, is finally disappearing from the case materials. Under that mask, there was no one but a coach from a different sports club. Cross is being removed from the category of victims of the faceless gravedigger and is officially recognized as a victim of a premeditated murder. The family, who for years had been filing petitions for the resumption of the search and each time received a refusal, receives the final conclusion in the case. The quarry is physically closed. The district drives in equipment and fills both pits with tons of rock to stop the flow of curious people who have begun to arrive at the site. New soil is laid on top. After a few seasons, grass grows there, even without any sign that under it once were 2 voids brought under a single pattern, aligned one under the other with a difference of 5 centimeters.